Medication Administration Training Program. Key forms and permissions.
There are two key forms that you will use as you administer medication to children: the medication consent form and the log of medication. Let's look at each one. First, the medication form. When it's properly filled in and signed, this form gives you permission to give a specific medication to a specific child. A separate consent form is needed for each child and for each medication that child is taking. The MATCH program has a consent form you can use, or you can create your own form. If you use a different consent form, it must include the information that's required by licensing regulations, and you should ask your licensing inspector to review the form. Which medications must have a consent form and who must sign the form? The Required Permissions to Give Medications handout gives you a useful summary of this information. Products that are not medications and over-the-counter products that are applied to the skin, such as lotions or sunscreens, don't require a signed consent form. However, it is a best practice to have a signed consent form for any product that is administered to a child. To give an over-the-counter medication or a prescription medication, you must have a consent form signed by the parent for that medication and that child. There are 3 situations in which the medication form must be signed by the child's healthcare provider as well as the parent. Any medication given by nebulizer or auto-injector, any medication given longer than 10 working days, whether prescription or over-the-counter. This type of written permission is called long-term permission. All non-prescription and over-the-counter medications and skin products must be used in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. For example, if the medication says, for children under age 2, consult physician, and the child is under 2, then you must have the healthcare provider's signature on the consent form as well as the parent's signature. How long can a consent form be valid? It is best practice that consent forms are valid for 12 months at most. However, this is a best practice. There is no regulatory requirement that a long-term consent form must be renewed every 12 months.
Documenting medication administration.
Now, let's talk about the second key form you'll be using when giving medications. It's the log of medication. You use this form to record each dose of medication that you give to a child in your care. The MAT program provides a log of medication form for you to use. You fill in the child's name and the medication name in the upper right corner. The form has places for all the information that you will need to write down after you give medication. If you choose to use another form, make sure it covers all the key information for each dose. It is best practice to use a separate log for each child and for each medication. So you should have a log of medication and a consent form for each medication you give. You can save time by keeping the consent form and the log for each medication together, since both forms will be used when you give the medication. What if the parent wants the child to have permission to self-administer emergency rescue medications? For emergency rescue medications only, inhalers, epinephrine auto-injectors, children aged 9 and above can be authorized to carry and self-administer these medications only if certain requirements are met. These requirements are detailed in the Independent Medication Administration handout. Written permission from the physician, parent, and the center director using the correct forms. Written acknowledgement from the parent and the child that this permission will be revoked if the child does not consistently, correctly, and responsibly perform his or her medication storage and self-administration tasks.